Our film begins with a guy named Andre talking to his girlfriend on the phone. She's giving him directions to a place he should go, but suddenly he finds himself being chased by a car. He decides to take a different route until he discovers that the door of the chasing car is open and completely empty. Suddenly, a masked person appears, hits him, and kidnaps him. Later, we see a guy named Chris getting ready and packing his bag because he's going to visit Rose's family to meet them. Before heading there, he asks Rose if her family knows that he is dark-skinned. She says no, and Chris is worried about their reaction. On their way to her family's house, Chris calls his friend Rod to thank him for taking care of his dog while he's away and seeks advice. Rod warns him not to visit the family of a white girl without letting them know about his race. However, Chris ignores his advice and proceeds. On the way, they hit an animal with the car and it died. Chris goes to investigate and finds a deer. Quickly, he calls the police to prove that the blood on the car is deer blood. After that, they continue their journey and arrive at Rose's family's house. Upon entering, Rose introduces Chris to her father Dean and her mother Missy. They warmly welcome Chris and they all sit down. Rose talks about the incident on the road and Dean mentions that he doesn't like deer anyway. Dean takes Chris on a tour of the house, showing him Missy's office, where she works as a psychologist. Chris also sees picture of their son Jeremy, who is studying medicine to become a neurosurgeon. Then, Dean takes Chris to the kitchen, introducing him to Georgina, who manages the household, and Walter the gardener. Both Georgina and Walter have dark skin like Chris. Dean clarifies that he didn't mean to stereotype them based on their skin color, but rather employed them to take care of his parents. After a while, they all gather in the garden and Chris notices that Missy is stirring her tea with a spoon and he realizes she's a smoker. When they find out Chris used to smoke, Dean offers Missy's expertise in hypnosis to help him quit. Dean tells Chris about his own experience with quitting smoking through Missy's hypnosis session. Despite the offer, Chris declines, stating that he doesn't want anyone meddling with his mind. Chris learns that there will be a party over the weekend with friends gathering. During this time, Georgina comes to serve them juice, but she seems distracted, accidentally spilling the juice without intending to. Missy tells her that she needs a break and Georgina responds with a strange smile, saying that she will do just that. At night, Jeremy arrives and they have dinner together, engaging in conversation. When Missy goes to get desserts, Georgina appears peculiarly. Jeremy continues to talk awkwardly about the color of their skin, creating a tense atmosphere. Missy returns with desserts and after some more conversation, everyone goes to bed. However, Chris can't sleep and finds himself thinking about the deer from the accident. He goes to the garden to smoke a cigarette. Suddenly, he notices someone approaching and it turns out to be Walter, the man who does running exercises. As Chris looks beside him, he sees Georgina standing strangely behind the glass. Chris decides to quickly leave and go back inside to sleep. But to his surprise, Missy is sitting there and asks him to chat for a while. She inquires if he knows about hypnosis and he responds that he knows it involves moving a watch in front of someone before they sleep. Missy laughs at him and starts talking about her memories. When she asks about Chris's mother, he avoids the topic. Missy then turns over the cup she's holding with the spoon, creating a loud noise. Chris starts talking, opening up about the accident and his feelings. As he recounts the story, he breaks down, unable to move or control himself. Missy commands him to sink, and suddenly, Chris feels like he's diving into a deep sea, unable to move. The next day, Chris wakes up startled, unsure if what happened was a dream or reality. He looks at his phone, finding it not charging. Quickly plugging it before it dies, he takes some pictures in the garden with his camera. He notices Georgina standing in front of the mirror in her room wearing a wig. When she realizes he's there, Chris pretends to be photographing something else. Later, while Walter is cutting wood in the garden, he apologizes for the previous night's scare, explaining that he enjoys running in the quiet of the night. Chris observes that Walter has a peculiar way about him and excuses himself, going inside. Afterward, they prepare for the party and the guests have already arrived. When they come downstairs, Rose asks Chris to act happy and smile. Most of the attendees are elderly and they start asking Chris very personal health-related questions. They start touching his muscles, making Chris uncomfortable. He decides to continue filming to escape the situation. As he records, he notices everyone looking at him, signaling as if they are observing him. Suddenly, a dark-skinned young man among the guests starts behaving strangely, revealing himself to be Andre, the one abducted at the beginning with peculiar mannerism. Soon after, his much older wife arrives, emotionally asking him to come with her to meet one of her friends and their family. Chris doesn't understand why everyone is treating him this way. He goes to his room and realizes his phone has been unplugged and turned off, causing him frustration. He initially suspects Georgina, but Rose tells him she didn't do anything, exaggerating the situation. Chris then calls his friend Rod and explains what is happening in the house. He feels that he was hypnotized yesterday and that people with dark skin in the house are acting strangely as if they are all under some kind of influence. Rod advises him to leave the house quickly, warning about Rose's mother who might make him do things without his control. After the call, Georgina enters and apologizes, admitting she unplugged his phone while cleaning the room. She reassures him that everything is normal, but suddenly she laughs hysterically as if wanting to say something but holding back. Later, Chris comes downstairs meeting Dean and his friends. Andre also appears and his wife urges him to show off to one of her friends and their family. Chris is confused by everyone's behavior. Suddenly, he tries to discreetly take a picture of Andre without his knowledge, but the flash accidentally goes off. Andre starts bleeding from his nose and in a fit of rage, he attacks Chris, insisting that he needs to leave the place. Jeremy intervenes to escort Chris quickly. When things calm down, Armitage enters and Andre apologizes for the situation, claiming it was a seizure beyond his control. Chris, feeling uneasy, decides to take a walk with Rose. Later, Chris and Rose walk to the lake where Chris tells her about his suspicion that he somehow knows Andre. He also mentions the odd behavior of her family and the tension in the house. Rose reassures him and says they should leave and return to the city. Back at Dean's house where Chris and Rose are staying, Chris observes his friends gathered in the garden. In front of them is a picture of him and Dean signals with his hands, indicating that they're having an auction for Chris. In the end, the auction is won by a blind person. At night, Chris and Rose return to the house. Chris sends a picture of Andre to Rod, who is shocked and urgently calls him, revealing that Andre is the partner of the girl he was involved with. However, Chris is different in appearance now, and Rod advises him to leave immediately because something is wrong. At that moment, Chris's phone disconnects and Rose enters, informing him that they need to leave the house immediately. As Rose prepares her bag, Chris notices a small closet door in the room. When he opens it, he finds a red box filled with old photos of Rose with many different dark-skinned individuals. To his surprise, he discovers that she had previous relationships with Walter and Georgina as well, so he decides to escape immediately. However, as soon as he goes downstairs, he finds Jeremy standing at the door and Missy is holding a cup, flipping it and asking Rose if she found the car keys or not. Rose tells him that she found them, but won't give them to him. This angers Chris and he realizes that he's being manipulated. He attempts to attack Jeremy, but at that moment Missy strikes the cup with a spoon, triggering Chris's hypnosis and he falls to the ground. Then she tells them to take him and prepare him. At that moment, Chris feels like he's drowning. Meanwhile, Rod tries to call Chris, but he doesn't answer. Later, he goes to Chris's house to feed his dog and starts searching for Andre. He discovers that Andre has been missing for 6 months and realizes that Chris is in danger. Simultaneously, we see Chris restrained in a chair in a closed room with a peculiar appearance. When he wakes up confused, a TV starts playing a video of Rose addressing him. She explains that he has been chosen for a special process and will be part of something bigger now. When the announcement ends, Chris loses consciousness again upon seeing the flipping cup. Rod reports his friend Chris's disappearance to the police, but they don't believe him, dismissing it as a prank because Chris is black. Rod decides to rescue his friend on his own. Later, Chris wakes up again, talks to the blind man who won the auction through the room's cameras and learns that he has passed the first stage of magnetic hypnosis. The second stage is mental rehabilitation and the third stage will involve partial organ transplantation. The blind man explains that Chris's mind will be transferred into a young and strong body, but Chris won't have full control like Walter and Georgina. The preparation for the operation begins and Cherry takes Chris to the operating room. As Cherry gives him a piggyback, Chris wakes up and delivers a strong blow to his head. Chris then removes the cotton from the chair he was tied to, preventing him from hearing the cup flipping and ensuring he doesn't fall into magnetic hypnosis again. Suddenly, Chris appears and hits him with the decorative antlers hanging in the room where he was tied, causing his death. Afterward, he walks through the house to the exit, finding Missy in front of him with the flipping cup. Before she can grab it, Chris breaks it and stabs her. He then attempts to leave the house but encounters Chermy, who thinks he's dead and attacks him. However, Chris manages to overpower him, takes the car keys from his pocket and escapes from the house. On the way, he encounters Georgina, making it difficult for him. He takes her with him, but in the car, he realizes that Rose's grandmother's mind had been transferred into her. She attacks him in the car until they have an accident and she dies. However, Chris survives and runs away from the car only to find Rose behind him shooting at him. Her grandfather in Walter's body is ordered to attack him. Chris quickly takes out his phone and turns on the flashlight in Walter's eyes until he regains consciousness. However, he tricks Rose into thinking he is still her grandfather and takes her gun, then hits her with it, causing her and Walter to die. Before Rose dies, she tells Chris that she loves him. At that moment, the police car arrives and Rose, thinking she'll be rescued, realizes that it's actually Rod coming to save Chris. They quickly leave the scene, leaving Rose to die. And that's the end of our movie. Thanks so much for making it this far. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what you want the next movie to be. Goodbye!